Have you ever stopped to wonder what life is really like when your father is one of the most famous geniuses in the world? On the outside, it might look like a dream, a life filled with prestige, history-making moments, and the glow of international admiration. But being the child of Stephen Hawking, the man who redefined our understanding of the universe while battling a devastating disease, was never just sunshine and stardust. Behind the lectures, best-selling books, and red carpet appearances, there was a quieter, more fragile reality unfolding at home. For Robert Lucy and Timothy Hawking, childhood didn't mean simply riding bikes, doing homework, or playing games in the garden. It meant watching their father lose his voice piece by piece, seeing machines become his lifeline, and growing up under the constant gaze of a world fascinated by his brilliance. And yet, out of that pressure came three very different paths. One child who carried quiet responsibility and built a stable life far away from cameras. Another who transformed her father's cosmic vision into stories that could light up a child's imagination. And the youngest, who brought laughter and mischief into a house too often weighed down by illness, only to later shoulder the responsibility of protecting the Hawking legacy. This is not just a story about the children of a famous scientist. It is a story about resilience, about what it means to grow up in the shadow of greatness, and how each of them, in their own way, learned to carry both the light and the burden of being Stephen Hawking's child. Number 3. Robert Hawking. Arriving in May 1967, just a few years after Stephen's ALS diagnosis, as the oldest child, Robert had to grow up quickly. He often shouldered responsibilities far beyond his age. Picture a young boy helping his frail father eat or assisting in lifting him into bed. That was Robert's reality. He became a sort of junior caregiver alongside his mom, developing a quiet strength and sense of duty from early on. Growing up, Robert was known to be bright and inquisitive, much like his dad. For a time, he even dreamed of becoming a scientist. It wouldn't be surprising. After all, science was quite literally discussed at the dinner table in the Hawking household. But Robert also witnessed firsthand the demanding life of a scientist and the harsh effects of disease. He eventually discovered his own passion in a different field, technology. Robert ended up studying software engineering at Oxford University, steering his talents toward computers instead of theoretical physics. In a way, he found a practical outlet for the analytical mind he inherited without directly stepping into the glare of the scientific spotlight. As an adult, Robert built a successful career behind the scenes. He moved to the United States and worked as a software engineer for Microsoft. Yes, the eldest son of the world's most famous theoretical physicist became a key tech expert at one of the world's biggest tech companies. If you think about it, that's fitting in its own way. He's using science and math skills just applied to computer software rather than black holes in equations. Robert's work even led to his name being included on a few patents. However, unlike his father's very public career, Robert's professional life took place largely out of the limelight. He excelled quietly, preferring a private, low-key existence. In his personal life, Robert embraced the stability that his childhood sometimes lacked. He got married and started a family of his own. Today, Robert is a proud husband and father of 2 children. The family settled in Seattle, Washington, about as far from the Cambridge spotlight as one can get. Neighbors and colleagues in Seattle might have no idea that the friendly British guy next door is the son of a scientific legend, and Robert is perfectly okay with that. He rarely gives interviews or seeks attention. He has occasionally stepped into public view for causes that matter. In 2014, Robert joined his sister and brother in taking the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, the viral campaign to raise awareness for the very disease that defined their dad's adult life. A video showed the Hawking siblings laughing and bracing themselves for icy water dumps, all in the name of charity. The video can't be found online anymore, but the story made headlines at the time. It was a rare moment of Robert saying, "Yes, I'm Stephen Hawking's son," and using that platform to do good while still keeping his characteristic modesty. When Stephen Hawking passed away in 2018, Robert, as the eldest, stood strong with his family. He helped carry his father's coffin during the funeral, a deeply poignant moment. After Stephen's death, all 3 children released a heartfelt joint statement. In it, Robert and his siblings praised their father's courage and persistence, and the light of inspiration he gave the world. It was clear that Robert loved and respected not just the public icon Stephen Hawking, but more importantly, Dad, who had taught him resilience and quiet courage. Today, Robert Hawking is in his mid-50s and continues to live a life far away from paparazzi cameras. He's the sibling who most resembles an ordinary life. A career in tech, a home in the suburbs, kids of his own. Number 2. Lucy Hawking. Born in November 1970, is Stephen Hawking's only daughter and middle child. Out of all 3 children, Lucy has been the most visible to the public, and for good reason. She inherited her father's talent for communication, though her medium is not mathematics or physics, but storytelling. Lucy grew up a whip-smart and imaginative girl who loved books and languages. While Stephen's world revolved around numbers and the cosmos, Lucy's world was filled with words and narratives. As a child, Lucy was very close to her father, but their interests diverged. She once said that as a little girl, she'd rather write stories or learn French than ponder quantum physics. In fact, Lucy went on to study French and Russian at Oxford University. Can you imagine telling your famous scientist dad that you don't want to study science? Lucy can. She recalled the day she broke the news to her father that she wasn't going to be a scientist. Stephen Hawking, with his cheeky wit, responded with a mix of disappointment and humor. He warned her, "This is a big mistake. You'll never be on the cutting edge now," delivered in that iconic computer-generated voice, but with a sad smile. Lucy knew he was proud of her no matter what, but that moment stuck with her. It shows the very human side of their relationship. Even geniuses get their hearts broken just a little when their kids choose a different path. Lucy didn't regret her decision. Science simply wasn't her passion. Instead, she found her calling in journalism and writing. After Oxford, she studied journalism in graduate school and launched a career as a journalist, writing for outlets like New York Magazine and The Telegraph. She had a talent for explaining complicated ideas in simple ways, a gift she no doubt picked up from watching her father communicate complex science to lay people. Lucy eventually transitioned from reporting facts to creating fictional worlds. She became a novelist. By her early 30s, she had published 2 novels for adults. The true magic happened when Lucy realized she could combine her understanding of storytelling with the scientific wonder she absorbed from her dad. Together with Stephen, she co-wrote a series of children's books that make science fun and accessible. The most famous of these is George's Secret Key to the Universe, an adventure tale that sneaks in real science concepts for young readers. Imagine a story where black holes and galaxies become the backdrop for a kid's adventure. That's what Lucy and Stephen crafted. This book and its sequels have been translated into dozens of languages and captivated children worldwide, inspiring a new generation to love science. It's as if Lucy took her father's torch of science communication and carried it into the realm of fantasy and adventure. Stephen Hawking would provide the mind-bending physics ideas, and Lucy would wrap them in an exciting story that a 10-year-old could get lost in. It was the perfect partnership of brains and creativity, father and daughter. Beyond books, Lucy emerged as a champion for science education and social causes. She's a familiar face at science festivals and literary events, often speaking about the importance of getting kids, especially girls, interested in science. In one memorable event, Lucy and her dad appeared on stage together. Stephen in his wheelchair, Lucy reading questions from curious children in the audience. One child asked Stephen, "What happens if you fall into a black hole?" Lucy watched her father conjure up an answer that turned into a mini lecture simplified for kids. Moments like this showed her how much fun science could be when it's shared in the right way. It cemented her mission to keep doing what she does best, translating her dad's cosmic knowledge into stories anyone can enjoy. Lucy's personal life has had its own chapters of joy and hardship. She married a man named Alex Mackenzie Smith in 1998 and soon became a mother herself. Her son William was born in the late 1990s, making Stephen a grandfather. Lucy adored her son, but when he was a toddler, she faced a difficult reality. William was diagnosed with autism. Lucy has openly spoken about how hearing that diagnosis felt like my heart was breaking into tiny pieces. But just as Lucy learned resilience from her father, she stepped up for her son with fierce love and determination. She became an advocate for autism awareness and support driven by personal experience. Lucy got involved with the Autism Research Trust as a trustee, helping raise funds and awareness for autistic children. She's also a vice president of National Star College, a UK college for students with disabilities. It seems the challenges in her life, growing up with a disabled father raising a neurodivergent child, only amplified her empathy and commitment to helping others. In 2004, Lucy went through a divorce to Boston, becoming a single mom to William. Stephen, despite his physical limitations, was very fond of his grandson. Lucy once shared a touching anecdote. Her father, unable to speak more than a word at a time, would use his thumb-controlled computer to painstakingly type out conversations with young William when he visited, even if it took ages. Stephen's face would light up in those moments. Lucy understood that despite his global fame, family meant the world to her dad. As the years went on, Lucy continued to write and speak. When Stephen Hawking passed away in 2018, Lucy took on a role somewhat like the family spokesperson. She gave moving tributes about her father's legacy, not just scientifically, but as a man who had a mischievous sense of humor and an endless curiosity. She helped organize memorial events, including a grand interment ceremony at Westminster Abbey, where her father's ashes were laid to rest between Isaac Newton and Charles Darwin. An all-inspiring resting place for an all-inspiring man. At that ceremony, Lucy and her brothers stood together, united in both grief and pride. Today, Lucy is in her early 50s and lives in London. She continues to write books for young readers that mix science with imagination. Through her work, she is quite literally keeping her father's legacy alive, one story at a time. If Stephen Hawking made complex science accessible for adults, Lucy is doing it for the next generation. She's also active in charitable work, raising awareness for autism and for people with disabilities, just as her father supported disability causes. With her warm and witty personality, Lucy has become a beloved figure in her own right. A storyteller, a science educator, and a devoted daughter and mother. Number 1. Timothy Hawking. Born in April 1979, is the youngest of Stephen and Jane's children, arriving 16 years after his father's ALS diagnosis. By the time Tim came into the world, Stephen's condition had advanced significantly. Tim never knew a time when his dad was able to walk unaided or speak with his natural voice. In Tim's early childhood, Stephen still had a bit of his own voice left, but it was soft and slurred, extremely hard to understand, especially for a little kid. Tim has shared that as a toddler, he often couldn't comprehend what his father was trying to say to him. Imagine the frustration for both father and son, one with so much to say and one eager to hear it, but a disease-created barrier in between. When Tim was around 5 years old, Stephen lost his voice completely after a life-saving tracheotomy. That could have been the end of the father-son relationship as they knew it. But ironically, it was a turning point for the better. Stephen got his famous computerized voice, and suddenly Tim could hear his father clearly through the robotic tones. Tim later reflected that in a strange way, the computer voice opened the door for them to truly talk for the first time. They bonded over things any young boy might bond with his dad over. A love of gadgets and a love of fast cars. Yes, despite being a brilliant physicist, Stephen Hawking enjoyed watching auto racing, and Tim loved it too. The two would spend afternoons tuned into Formula One races on TV, cheering and commenting via Stephen's voice synthesizer. It was something just for them. Little Tim also had an Ferrari streak and a great sense of humor, which, let's be honest, he probably got from his prankster dad. One famous family story is how Tim used to play tricks on Stephen's speech synthesizer. The system allowed Stephen to type out words that the computerized voice would then speak. Well, clever Tim figured out how to program naughty words into it. He would secretly slip in some choice phrases so that in the middle of a serious conference or conversation, the voice would suddenly spout a random swear word. Imagine the look on Professor Hawking's face when his computer unexpectedly cursed. By all accounts, Stephen had a hearty laugh about it once he realized Tim was the culprit. Tim also loved to clamber onto the back of his dad's wheelchair, treating it like a go-kart for rides around the house and garden. These mischievous antics could have annoyed some parents, but Stephen appreciated them. It was a way for father and son to relate normally, to inject fun into a life dominated by machines and medical care. Tim's childhood stories show that even in a household full of challenges, there was room for laughter and play. However, Tim's youth wasn't all fun and games. The Hawking family went through a major upheaval when Stephen and Jane's marriage fell apart. By the early 1990s, Jane had developed feelings for a family friend, who later became her second husband, and Stephen had grown close to one of his nurses, Elaine. Stephen and Jane separated, and in 1995, they divorced. Tim was only 15 or 16 then. Shortly afterward, Stephen married Ella Mason. For Tim, this meant watching his family structure completely change overnight. His siblings were adults by then, but Tim was still living at home. And suddenly there was a stepmother in the picture and lingering tensions in the family. There were even ugly rumors whispered in the tabloids, suggesting that Tim, born so late in the marriage, might not actually be Stephen's biological son, implying Jane's earlier friendship might have been more. This kind of gossip could be hurtful for a teenager already going through a family breakup. Thankfully, Jane denied those rumors firmly, and it's universally accepted in the family that Tim is undoubtedly Stephen's son. Still, it was a rough period for the youngest Hawking, who, by all accounts, idolized his dad and just wanted a normal, peaceful life. To Jane's great credit, she encouraged the kids to maintain a relationship with their father even after the split. Tim split time between his mom's home and visits to his dad and Elaine. It wasn't easy, but Tim managed to remain close with Stephen. As the years passed, Tim went to university in England, studying French and Spanish at Exeter University for his undergraduate degree. Yes, like his sister Lucy, he had a knack for languages. It seems the Hawking kids collectively said, "We'll leave the physics to Dad. We're going to learn about people and culture." After college, Tim decided to add some business skills to the mix. He earned a master's degree in marketing from the University of Birmingham in 2005. Armed with a sharp mind and a friendly, personable demeanor, Tim embarked on a career in the corporate world. He worked as an account manager for several companies, honing his skills in client relations. Then came a pretty cool gig that fit perfectly with Tim's inner child. He landed a job at Lego. Yes, the company famous for those little bricks. Tim started as a loyalty executive, a marketing role focused on customer loyalty programs, and climbed his way up over the years. By the mid-200s, he became a brand development manager at Lego. Think about that. While his dad was developing theories on the origins of the universe, Tim was developing the brand of one of the world's most beloved toy companies. In his own way, he was spreading creativity and joy, which isn't so far off from spreading knowledge. Tim's colleagues described him as creative, fun-loving, and very dedicated. Someone who could bring people together, perhaps a reflection of growing up bridging communication gaps with his father. Tim worked at Lego until 2019. Around that time, life brought another turning point. Stephen Hawking had passed away the year before, and Tim felt a calling to step up and help preserve his father's legacy. He left the corporate world of toys to join the effort to manage and protect everything related to Stephen Hawking's estate and name. Essentially, Tim became a brand development specialist for the Hawking estate. This role can involve many things, from overseeing intellectual property, like Stephen's writings, voice recordings, and image, to working on charitable projects or educational initiatives that carry on Stephen's work. Tim has indicated that this is a work in progress and a mission close to his heart. He wants to ensure that his father's contributions to science and society continue to inspire people for generations to come. It's a big responsibility, but who better for the job than someone who deeply understands Stephen Hawking as both a scientific legend and as a dad. Though Tim, now in his mid-40s, is generally a private individual, he has appeared publicly a few times to represent the family. In 2018, he and Lucy gave interviews during the global launch of Stephen's final book, Brief Answers to the Big Questions. Tim sat beside his sister at the Science Museum in London as they discussed how important this last message from their father was. He spoke with a mix of humor and poignancy, proving that he's quite adept at public speaking when duty calls. In 2021, Tim and his siblings participated in a documentary called Can You Hear Me?, which candidly explored Stephen Hawking's life with ALS from the family's perspective. Tim opened up about the difficult and profound moments of having a dad who communicated through a machine and how that shaped who he is. Nowadays, Tim lives in the UK and continues his behind-the-scenes work on the Hawking estate. He's the kind of person who doesn't seek fame for himself, much like his brother Robert, but he's passionate about making sure his father's work continues to educate and inspire.